So, hang on a sec. So, are you asking about the value in getting away from it all? Are you talking about the practicalities about how to do that?
I
Uh,
suppose I suppose a mixture of the two, but more the value of seclusion, stepping away from work, home-related chores, social media, you name it. Just, I suppose, how to implement it, yes, but the value that one can take from maybe just a few hours a week on one day, like a weekend, just to
mhm.
yourself, the value of it.
Well, there's several ways of beginning to look at it. One of the ways of looking at it is that getting away from it all or seclusion actually goes against our instincts.
Yeah, we're quite social
And
creatures.
because we are social creatures, in fact, we discussed that a long time ago when you first called, right down to fish and schooling. Okay.
Yes, I remember. I remember.
Okay, so that nesting, schooling, herding instinct is the basis for human society.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, you could go so far as to say, and exploration is nothing more than pushing one's territorial boundary. But it's
Yeah, yeah.
still the territorial instinct works hand in glove with the nesting instinct. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, the territorial instinct is what gives the nesting instinct its power or its foundation.
Mm.
And that we do it in the sense of there is us and there is the known and there is the safe and secure here. But out there, it's unknown. It's not our territory. It's not part of our nest. We don't know those people or those animals. They're different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so that whole mentality is basically those two aspects, but out of an even deeper instinct, and that's the self preservation instinct that
Mm.
is basically fear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So being afraid is our most primary deep emotion,
Yeah.
is fear, which means that the primary release from that is going to be feeling uh, safe and
Safe.
secure to the point of freedom,
Yeah.
because freedom is always limited by what we can hide behind.
Yeah,
And
that's a
if we
very, very,
don't, yeah, and if we don't need
very good way
anything to
to.
hide,
Mm.
and if we don't need to hide behind anything, then we have much more freedom. In fact, you could think of freedom is just another word for exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also another one that comes out of a song. Freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. Freedom's just
Yeah.
another word of having nothing left to lose. And therefore, because you have no baggage, you have nothing to cling to, you are now free to go
Mm. Yeah,
as
yeah,
you
yeah.
choose.
Nothing weighing you
Okay.
down.
And so, in fact, one of the things that weighed us down by far more than anything else that we know of, that is expressed in the the Pali term Silabhata Paramasa, which is our clinging, the way that the Buddha talks about it, is clinging to rites, rules, and rituals is the same thing as us clinging to the nest. So
Mm-hmm.
Buddha's Silabhata Paramasa, which is in fact also we refer to as the parent ego state.
Mm-hmm.
or telling us what the rules are. This is basically what we're talking about is society. So now what we're talking about is this instinctual nesting instinct is a really, really heavy burden upon us that we don't even recognize and realize until we start to set it down. And this is
Mhm.
where the seclusion comes into. So there's much, much more to it at a really deep level than merely the way that I normally express it, which is in the sense that we need to get away from the outside world so that we can deal with what's left of that outside world that we did carry into seclusion, so that we now
Mm.
can become secluded from that too.
Mm.
Okay. And what that means is that we learn to be on guard for what society would normally be telling us if we were in society. When we go into seclusion, there that society is still yapping at us, telling us what we ought to be doing.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay. Now, this society that we're talking about is actually more closely understood, and also in the sense of all of our attachments or all of our repetitive telling ourselves what the rules are, how to get along, all of that kind of stuff is the Sila Paramasa. That then, when the psychologists started looking at it, Freud came up with the issue of the ego, the superego, and the id, which is the actual superego, is this society, and that it's weighing down or controlling the id, which would, in, let us say, very primitive situations, a very primitive situation means the child grows up completely wild. So, what makes us domesticated or what makes us socialized is the socialization process we go through. That we're not really natural inside. That if every one of us grew up like Tarzan, we would be very Tarzan-like. And there's other stories that have happened from time to time in society. But basically, when a young man or a child grows up in a very primitive society or situation, they have skills of observation and perception that most people in society don't have because we've got the shackles of this is the way things should be.
Yeah, I've heard quite a few stories of like wild children and stuff like that. Children who have just ended up, for whatever reason, growing up isolated in a forest, and they behave very animal-like, you know.
Because
And
we are, and
we are animals, yeah, yeah. And when these kids are tried to, when these kids are they're trying to be reintroduced to society and whatnot, they
no,
can't
not
pick up
reintroduced,
language.
not
Introduced. I do
reintroduced.
apologize. When they are in trying to be introduced into society, they can't pick up language. They can't pick up and understand like technology and all sorts of stuff like that. They're
In other
completely.
words, once a child grows up in the society, in fact, by watching some Stanford videos on YouTube
Mhm.
on behavioral biology, I've come to understand how genes work that are turned on and off, not at birth or not at conception. A lot of people have the idea that the genes come together, there's mommy and there's daddy, and then there is us at that point of conception.
Now, at some
To
points
where,
in life, events can happen which trigger genes to be turned on or off, which give rise to different behaviors or feelings and stuff like that.
okay, and that's right. So a lot of stuff is learned.
Mm.
A lot of stuff was that actually we learned it in childhood, which then sets things almost in concrete or actually in DNA. There's one of the examples that they use in this course, which it just really struck me strongly because I recognize that this too has happened. All right. And what it is that in World War II, at the end of the war, Germany was running out of food as the Allies were coming in. And so some of the satellite countries, including, I think, the Netherlands, were starved for about 3 months until when the Germans pulled out, and all of the food